I've always been the kind of guy who shows up early to work, even when no one else does. There's something calming about the quiet hum of the office before everyone floods in with their chatter and complaints. That morning, I was sitting at my desk, sipping coffee that had already gone lukewarm, staring at lines of code on my second monitor like they were pieces of a puzzle waiting to be solved. My name is Ethan Cole, and for the past 10 years, I've poured my heart into Vanguard Innovations, a cybersecurity firm in the heart of Manhattan. The project I was working on wasn't just another assignment. It was the assignment, an encryption algorithm so advanced it could redefine how companies protect sensitive data globally. If this thing worked, and trust me, it could put Vanguard Innovations on the map as an industry leader. The board meeting later that day felt like my moment. The culmination of years spent grinding away behind the scenes while others took credit. But then again, I never cared much for recognition. I just wanted to see my work make a difference. As I adjusted my glasses and leaned back in my chair, I couldn't help but overhear snippets of conversation from the break room. Did you hear? Nate Whitaker is taking over. Someone laughed nervously. Yeah, good luck to us all. I didn't need to ask who Nate Whitaker was. Everyone knew him. The prodigal son of our CEO, Richard Whitaker. Nate had built himself a reputation out west as some sort of tech wunderkind turned shark. Rumor had it he was coming home because his dad was stepping aside temporarily due to health issues. Still, none of that mattered to me. Or so I thought. Nate walked into the office like he owned the place, which, technically, he did now. He strode to the glass doors wearing a tailored suit that screamed money, flanked by two assistants clutching tablets like they were carrying the tablets of Moses himself. His presence was magnetic, not in a charming way, but more like a black hole sucking up all the oxygen in the room. When he spoke during the all-hands meeting, his voice carried this weird mix of confidence and disdain, like he already thought we were beneath him. "Change is coming," he said, pacing slowly across the front of the conference room. "And those who can't adapt will get left behind." His words hung heavy in the air, and I swear I heard someone gulp audibly. Grace, my closest colleague, and probably the only person here who actually understood what I did, shot me a glance from across the table. She raised an eyebrow, silently asking, "What do you think of this guy?" I shrugged, pretending indifference, though deep down I felt uneasy. Later, Grace pulled me aside. "You know he tried to recruit me once, right?" she whispered, her tone conspiratorial. "Back when I first joined the company. He offered me double my salary to come work for his startup. But when I turned him down," she paused, shaking her head. "Let's just say he doesn't take rejection well." That evening, as I packed up my things and headed home, I couldn't shake the feeling that Nate Whitaker's arrival marked the beginning of something big. Not necessarily good, but definitely big. Little did I know just how personal things were about to get. It happened so fast, I barely had time to process it. 1 minute, I was reviewing last-minute details for my presentation at the board meeting. The next, I was being summoned to Nate's office. When I stepped inside, he didn't even look up from whatever document he was reading. "Ethan Cole," he said flatly, as if testing the weight of my name on his tongue. Then he finally glanced at me, his piercing blue eyes scanning me like I was some defective product. "Effective immediately. Your position has been terminated." "What?" I blurted out, caught off guard. "Why?" He smirked, leaning back in his leather chair. "Budget cuts. Redundancy. Pick whichever corporate buzzword makes you feel better. Bottom line, you're not needed anymore." My blood boiled, but I forced myself to stay calm. "With respect, Mr. Whitaker, I'm leading a critical project." "I'll handle it," he interrupted, waving a dismissive hand. "Don't worry. Your absence won't be missed." The word stung more than I cared to admit. As I gathered my belongings, rage simmered beneath the surface. What he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that hours earlier I'd uploaded the prototype of my algorithm to the company server. It wasn't finished yet, but it was close enough to cause chaos if triggered improperly. And trigger it, I would. Grace found me sitting on a park bench near the office, staring blankly at the city skyline. She handed me a cup of coffee without saying a word, which I appreciated more than anything else she could have done. "You okay?" she asked eventually, her voice soft. "No," I admitted, running a hand through my hair. "But I will be." She nodded knowingly. "Nate's a snake, Ethan. Don't let him win." Her words hit harder than I expected. Winning wasn't really my style. I preferred staying under the radar, letting my work speak for itself. But Nate hadn't just fired me. He dismissed everything I stood for. Worse, he underestimated me. And that was a mistake I planned to exploit. Over the next few days, I kept tabs on Vanguard innovations through Grace. Reports trickled in about minor glitches cropping up across the system. Delayed emails, corrupted files, login errors. Nothing catastrophic, yet. But I knew it was only a matter of time before things spiraled out of control. Grace called me late one night, her voice trembling with urgency. "Ethan, you need to see this." She sent me screenshots of internal reports showing anomalies spreading like wildfire throughout the company's infrastructure. At first glance, they looked random, almost accidental. But I recognized the patterns immediately. They were signatures of my algorithm, subtle breadcrumbs designed to escalate problems unless specific conditions were met. "It's happening faster than I expected," I muttered, scrolling through the images. "What are you going to do?" Grace asked. For a moment, I hesitated. Part of me felt guilty for involving her, for dragging her into this mess. But another part, the angrier, more vindicated part, wanted nothing more than to watch Nate squirm. "I'm going to let him dig his own grave," I replied darkly. As the days turned into weeks, Nate's frustration became palpable. He stormed through the halls barking orders, blaming IT for incompetence, accusing departments of sabotage. Meanwhile, the glitches grew worse, culminating in a major outage that brought the entire system crashing down for nearly 24 hours. Watching from afar, I allowed myself a small measure of satisfaction. This was exactly what I'd hoped for. Chaos. But there was more to it than revenge. Years ago, Nate had approached me with an offer to join his startup. Back then, I'd turned him down, telling him his ideas lacked substance. Now, looking back, I realized he'd taken it personally. Firing me wasn't just business. It was payback. Only problem was, Nate had no idea just how dangerous his enemy truly was. Grace became my lifeline during those tense weeks following my firing. Every evening, she'd call or text me updates from inside Vanguard Innovations, painting a picture of mounting chaos that even Nate couldn't ignore. But as much as I appreciated her loyalty, it weighed on me, knowing she was risking her career to help me. "You shouldn't be doing this," I told her one night after she sent me another round of internal reports. "If Nate finds out—" "He won't," she interrupted firmly. "Besides, someone has to keep you in the loop. You're not exactly subtle about your little sabotage campaign." I chuckled despite myself. Subtle wasn't really the goal here. The glitches caused by my algorithm were designed to escalate slowly but visibly, creating cracks in the foundation of Nate's leadership. And Grace was right. It was working. Meanwhile, I started reaching out to former clients and partners under the guise of networking. Over casual phone calls and coffee meetings, I hinted at instability within Vanguard Innovations without explicitly naming names. Within days, rumors began circulating, and key contracts started falling through. Nate, predictably, blamed everyone but himself. He fired 2 senior managers in quick succession, accusing them of incompetence. Morale plummeted, and employees whispered openly about quitting. Watching him unravel from afar gave me a twisted sense of satisfaction, but also guilt. These people hadn't done anything wrong. They were collateral damage in my war against Nate. Still, I reminded myself why I was doing this. If I didn't stop him now, who would? The first major blow came when Titan Tech, a longtime client and one of Vanguard's biggest accounts, canceled their contract. According to industry insiders, Titan cited leadership concerns as the reason for pulling out. When news broke, stock prices tanked overnight. Investors panicked, flooding Nate's inbox with angry emails demanding answers. In response, Nate held an impromptu press conference where he lashed out at me publicly, calling me a disgruntled ex-employee trying to ruin the company. "Ethan Cole thinks he can destroy what we built," he sneered into microphone, his face flushed with anger. "But let me make one thing clear. He is nothing. a nobody who never contributed anything meaningful to this organization. His words stung more than I expected, not because they were true, I knew better, but because part of me wondered if anyone else believed him. Did my colleagues think I was just some bitter loser holding a grudge? That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the glowing screen of my laptop. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I crossing a line? Had I gone too far? Then I remembered the smug look on Nate's face when he fired me, the dismissive tone in his voice. No, I thought, this isn't just about revenge. It's about justice. Things escalated quickly after Titan Tech backed out. Major investors demanded emergency board meetings, threatening to pull funding unless Nate could prove he had things under control. Meanwhile, my algorithm continued wreaking havoc, triggering critical data breaches that exposed sensitive information to competitors. Grace called me late one night, panic evident in her voice. Ethan, Nate knows something's up. He hired a team of consultants to reverse engineer the system. They're closing in on the source of the problem. My stomach dropped. I'd anticipated this possibility, of course, but hearing it confirmed sent a chill down my spine. How close are they? I asked, already scrambling to think of a plan. They haven't found the core yet, she replied. But it's only a matter of time. What do you want me to do? Nothing, I said firmly. Stay out of it. If Nate figures out you're helping me, you'll lose your job or worse. There was a long pause before she responded. You know I'm not going anywhere, right? Whatever happens, we're in this together. Her words warmed me, but they also terrified me. Grace was putting everything on the line for me, and I couldn't let her sacrifice go to waste. That same night, I activated another layer of the algorithm, one specifically designed to lock down entire sections of the system, making it impossible for anyone to access critical files. By morning, half the office was locked out of their accounts. Nate was livid. Watching Nate unravel was almost poetic. Gone was the confident, arrogant CEO who strutted around like he owned the world. In his place stood a desperate man grasping at straws, willing to do anything to save face. He called an all-hands meeting, his usual swagger replaced by thinly veiled panic. Whoever is behind these attacks will be caught, he declared, his voice trembling slightly. And when they are, they'll regret ever setting foot in this company. Afterward, he cornered Grace in the break room, accusing her of leaking confidential information to me. I don't know what you're talking about, she lied, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Don't play dumb with me, Nate snapped. You're either with me or against me. Choose wisely. Grace managed to hold her ground, but when she recounted the conversation to me later, I could hear the strain in her voice. This is getting dangerous, Ethan, she warned. If Nate keeps digging, he's going to find us. I know, I admitted, but backing down now is an option. We're too close. Close to what exactly, I wasn't sure. Revenge? Justice? Redemption? Maybe all three. Either way, there was no turning back now. Vanguard Innovations officially teetered on the brink of collapse. Stock prices hit rock bottom, and several high-profile clients severed ties entirely. Investors called for Nate's resignation, accusing him of gross mismanagement. In a last-ditch effort to salvage his reputation, Nate announced plans to unveil a groundbreaking solution at an upcoming tech summit. Privately, I suspected he intended to present my algorithm as his own work. After all, it was still sitting untouched on the company's server, ready to deploy once he figured out how to activate it. Grace kept feeding me intel, including details about Nate's frantic attempts to reverse engineer the code. He's bringing in outside experts, she reported one evening. They're running simulations nonstop. Try to crack it. They won't succeed, I assured her confidently. Not without the decryption key, and that's something only I have. But even as I said it, unease prickled at the edges of my mind. What if they somehow managed to bypass the safeguards? What if Nate got lucky? It happened sooner than I expected. One afternoon, Grace texted me urgently. Nate knows. He's coming for you. Before I could process what she meant, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Nate himself. We need to talk, he growled over the line. Meet me at the office. Now. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Walking into Vanguard Innovations felt surreal, like stepping into a ghost town. Most employees had already fled, leaving the halls eerily silent. Nate waited for me in his office, pacing like a caged animal. When I walked in, he whirled around, his face contorted with rage. "You think you're clever, don't you?" he spat. "Sabotaging the company, ruining everything I've worked for." "Funny," I interrupted coolly. "I was going to say the same thing about you." His jaw clenched. "Fix it, Ethan, or so help me." "Or what?" I challenged. "You'll fire me again?" "Oh, wait, you already did that." For a moment, we stared each other down, neither willing to back down. Finally, Nate sighed, deflating slightly. "Look, I'll admit I made a mistake," he said begrudgingly. "You're smarter than I gave you credit for. Come back, and we'll make this right, together." I wanted to laugh. Instead, I shook my head. "No deal, Nate. You burned that bridge the day you fired me." Nate's face twisted in frustration, but there was something else flickering in his eyes, fear. For the first time since he'd taken over Vanguard Innovations, he looked genuinely vulnerable. It was almost satisfying to see him stripped of his arrogance, reduced to pleading with someone he once dismissed as expendable. "Don't be stupid, Ethan," he snapped, trying to regain control of the situation. "Do you really think you can take down a multi-billion-dollar company and walk away unscathed? If this goes south, you'll go down with it." I crossed my arms, leaning casually against the doorframe. "Maybe," I said evenly, "but at least I'll know I did the right thing." That seemed to hit a nerve. Nate's composure cracked further, and for a brief moment, I saw the insecure young man beneath the polished exterior, the one who'd always felt overshadowed by his father's legacy. "You don't understand," he muttered, more to himself than to me. "If I fail here, I lose everything. My reputation, my career. Hell, even my family won't look at me the same way." It wasn't sympathy I felt. It couldn't be, not after everything he'd done. But I understood desperation when I saw it. Still, understanding didn't mean forgiving. Before I could respond, Grace burst into the room, her face pale. "Ethan, we got a problem." She handed me her tablet, displaying an email thread between Nate and several high-ranking officials within the company. They weren't just discussing ways to reverse engineer my algorithm. They were actively covering up evidence of financial misconduct. Fraudulent transactions, falsified reports, embezzlement schemes. It was all there, laid bare in black and white. Nate froze, his eyes darting nervously between Grace and me. "You shouldn't have seen that," he whispered hoarsely. Too late. Grace and I spent the rest of the night piecing together the extent of Nate's corruption. The deeper we dug, the uglier it got. It wasn't just mismanagement. It was outright criminal behavior. And worst of all, it had been going on long before Nate took over. "This changes everything," Grace said quietly as we sat side by side on my couch, surrounded by printouts and screenshots. "If regulators find out about this..." "They will," I interrupted firmly, "because I'm going to make sure they do." The next morning, I submitted an anonymous whistleblower report to the Securities and Exchange Commission, attaching every shred of evidence we'd uncovered. By evening, federal investigators descended on Vanguard Innovations like a swarm of locusts, seizing documents, freezing assets, and arresting key players, including Nate. Watching him being let out of the building in handcuffs was surreal. Part of me expected him to lash out, to scream or curse or beg for mercy. Instead, he walked silently, his head bowed in defeat. As much as I wanted to feel triumphant, all I felt was exhaustion. Justice had been served, but at what cost? With Nate gone, the board moved swiftly to stabilize the company. Richard Whitaker returned from medical leave, looking older and wearier than I remembered. He called me into his office the day after Nate's arrest, his expression unreadable. "Ethan," he began, his voice gravelly with emotion, "I owe you an apology for my son's actions, for failing to see your value sooner, and for letting things get this far." I nodded stiffly, unsure how to respond. Apologies were nice, but they didn't erase the damage done. "I'd like to offer you your old position back," he continued, "with a promotion to Chief Technology Officer. You've earned it." For a moment, I considered refusing. After everything that had happened, Could I really return to Vanguard Innovations? But then I thought about the unfinished projects, the colleagues still fighting to keep the company afloat, the potential for real change under new leadership. I accept, I said finally, on one condition: we implement reforms to prevent anything like this from happening again. Richard agreed without hesitation. My first order of business as CTO was rolling out my encryption algorithm, the very project Nate had tried to bury. With proper funding and support, it became a cornerstone of Vanguard Innovations' renewed focus on ethical cybersecurity solutions. Within months, the company bounced back stronger than ever, earning praise from industry leaders and clients alike. Grace received a well-deserved promotion to lead data analytics, and together, we formed a leadership team dedicated to transparency and innovation. Employees who had once feared speaking up now felt empowered to share ideas, knowing their voices would be heard. Still, success tasted bittersweet. Every milestone reminded me of the price we'd paid to get there. The friendship strained, the trust broken, the lives disrupted. Yet amidst the chaos, I found clarity. This wasn't just about revenge or vindication anymore. It was about rebuilding, not just a company, but myself. Reconciliation wasn't easy. Many former colleagues harbored resentment toward me, believing I'd orchestrated the downfall of the company they loved. Some refused to speak to me altogether, while others eyed me warily, unsure whether to trust me. But slowly, relationships began to mend. During team meetings, I made a point of acknowledging mistakes, not just mine, but everyone's, and emphasizing the importance of moving forward together. Over coffee breaks and casual conversations, I worked to rebuild bridges one person at a time. Grace remained my rock throughout it all. Her unwavering support kept me grounded during moments of doubt, reminding me why I'd fought so hard in the first place. "You're doing good work, Ethan," she told me one evening as we wrapped up another long day. "People are starting to see that." Her faith in me meant more than any accolade or title ever could. Nate pleaded guilty to multiple charges of fraud and embezzlement in exchange for reduced sentencing. In court, he testified against several accomplices, exposing a web of corruption that reached far beyond Vanguard Innovations. The scandal rocked the tech industry, prompting calls for stricter regulations and accountability measures. For weeks, my name appeared in headlines alongside stories of corporate greed and redemption. Reporters hounded me for interviews, eager to paint me as either a hero or a villain. I declined every request. "My story isn't about me," I told Grace when she asked why I refused to speak publicly. "It's about what happens when power goes unchecked. Let them focus on that." Under my leadership, Vanguard Innovations launched a successful product line based on my encryption algorithm. Sales soared, and customer feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Critics hailed it as a game changer, solidifying our place at the forefront of the cybersecurity revolution. Yet despite the accolades, I remained focused on the bigger picture. I spearheaded initiatives to mentor young developers, particularly those from underrepresented backgrounds, ensuring the next generation of innovators wouldn't face the same barriers I had. Each small victory reminded me of how far we'd come and how much farther we still had to go. Late one night, as I sat alone in my office reflecting on the past year, I realized something profound. I wasn't the same person I'd been when this whole mess began. Back then, I defined myself by my work, seeking validation through achievements and recognition. Now, I understood that true fulfillment came not from titles or awards, but from making a difference in people's lives and the world around us. Grace often joked that I'd become softer since taking over as CTO. Maybe she was right, but if softer meant caring more deeply about the impact of my decisions, then I welcomed the change. When Richard Whitaker announced his retirement 6 months later, the board unanimously voted to appoint me as CEO. Accepting the role felt surreal, like stepping into a dream I'd never dared to imagine. At the press conference announcing the transition, Richard placed a hand on my shoulder and smiled warmly. "Vanguard Innovations couldn't be in better hands," he said. As cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions, I allowed myself a rare moment of pride. This wasn't just my victory, it was ours. Together, we'd turn a crisis into an opportunity, proving that even in the darkest times, hope could prevail. Just as life seemed to settle into a comfortable rhythm, I received an anonymous letter slipped under my office door. Inside was a single sheet of paper containing detailed instructions for bypassing the safeguards in my encryption algorithm. My blood ran cold. Someone else knew what I'd done, and they weren't afraid to use it against me. Whoever sent the letter clearly had insider knowledge. Were they an ally warning me of impending danger, or an enemy preparing to strike? Either way, one thing was certain. My journey was far from over. At a global tech summit months later, I delivered a keynote speech addressing ethics in leadership. Success isn't measured by power or wealth. I concluded, it's measured by the legacy we leave behind. Let's build a future where integrity matters more than ambition, where collaboration outweighs competition. Because ultimately, none of us succeeds unless we all do. As applause filled the auditorium, I caught sight of Grace sitting in the front row, beaming with pride. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew I wouldn't face them alone.